We've all heard of WikiLeaks. Now brace yourself for a new kind of leak. The tax files shaking up Canberra. With whispers of sweeping reform, Treasury's leaked papers reveal plans to raise taxes, slash spending, sparking fierce debate ahead of the next election cycle. But that is a long way away. From property taxes to pensions, a higher GST rate even, nothing appears sacred as the government hints at bold moves to plug the budget black hole. And just like clockwork, the political playbook rolls on. Bad news holding course, then promising some sunshine. For more to break it all down, we're joined by our money man here at Ticket, Dr. Stephen Entickett. Good to see you, sir. Does this surprise you at all? A big election, a big mandate. We're not sure what it's for, but it looks like higher taxes.
Well, it sounds like you've lived through a few elections, Mr. Young, because we're following the age-old formula. We're not going to talk about taxes pre-election, of course. Everything's fine. There's nothing to see. And all of a sudden...
Well, they were talking about tax cuts is the only thing we heard.
Absolutely right. The $5. How soon we forget that. But at the end of the day, they've got in, and now they're saying, oh, no, we actually have a mandate for massive tax reform.
Well, we saw this leak come out of Treasury, and the suggestions for the tax increases were pretty substantial. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, it got worse than that because the National Press Club, the first one our Treasurer did was basically to launch into, I have a mandate, these are things, tax has got to change, and I'm going to do it. And then a month later, as you've just pointed out, Treasury's now accidentally leaked some papers to hint at what's coming. And now we've got some of the left-leaning press putting out popular opinion polls on what tax is more palatable over the other. So they're building us up for the first budget of an election cycle. There is going to be tax changes. It's just going to be, what are those tax changes going to be? My view, they're going to leave people, the taxpayer, alone from an earning.
Well, they're voters.
That's right. We've been milked for the last 30, 40 years, and you can't milk us any harder. Likewise with business. Business is under enormous pressure, enormous taxing pressure, state taxes, federal taxes, compliance costs, you name it. So I don't think they can go after business. What they can go after, and what is being pushed, I think, is wealth-based taxes. So I can see a lot of things changing. I can see, the refund of franking credits, which no one's talking about, and every budget night we seem to get a surprise. That's my early tip, that if you're receiving a refund for your franking credits, when Paul Keating originally bought it in 20, 30, 40 years ago, whatever it might be now, it was never really intended that people would be getting big refunds of company tax coming back individually. So I can see that stopping. I can also see pension tests coming in. So if you're sitting on a $2, $3, $4 million home in a wealthy suburb, and that's excluded from the pension, there's got to be a point where it becomes unsustainable, and they're going to bring that in.
This sounds like an attack on the boomers.
It is. It's a wealth-based tax. We've already spoken historically about death taxes. Capital gains tax is an interesting one. I've read some good reports that, the 50% discount is too generous. Yeah, but no one's putting money into housing at the moment. So if you take away those CGT discounts and attack negative gearing, which always seems to be impossible, who's going to put money into housing? You've already got incredible state taxes on housing. So if we're looking at addressing the housing boom, I've got a feeling there's going to be something along the lines of, we're going to reduce the capital gains discount down to 30%, which I feel's been on the cards for a while. But maybe for new housing, they're going to make it like 75%. So they're going to try and get people to tip money into there. GST is an unpopular one. When John Howard brought it in, he said 10% forever.
Yes, and that was the idea. And a lot of small businesses are still pretty angry about the GST, by the way, because it pushed so much onto them. Do you think the GST rate will increase?
It's a tough one.
It's pretty low compared to the rest of the world, right?
That's right.
You've got 20% in some countries, 15% in New Zealand. Australia's GST is actually incredibly low compared to the rest of the world. Did John Howard make a mistake at it being 10% perhaps?
Well, some argue the rate was too low, and some argue it should be on everything, like excluding food and some financial services and all those.
The Democrats brought us that, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah. So I got a feeling there might be a shift not to raise it, but to increase where it goes. In other words, to push more burdens onto business. Some might argue it's actually going to make business easier, because at the moment you've got to think, is that an input tax supply? Is that a GST supply? Is that a GST-free supply?
Well, now you sound like John Hewson in the birthday cake. The issue is through the 80s and 90s, we saw great reform that was meant to set us up. So you saw the Keating and Hawke years. They did a great job of floating the dollar, for example. Then you saw the GST and the Howard years of the Future Fund. Since then, there hasn't really been a huge amount of economic reform.
Look, I don't blame anyone. I don't like any side of politics in particular, but Rudd and Gillard did change it. You did have have.
Well, they tried the mining tax and the carbon tax, so they're not there anymore.
But then they brought in all the health reforms, good or bad, the NDIS, all those sorts of things. So we've seen a lot of money go into health, but productivity hasn't come out the other side. So there's a lot of things going on in our economy that is reducing productivity, red tape being one, and lack of public service contributing and all those sorts of things. If you haven't got the productivity, you haven't got the increase in tax revenue, you're sooner or later going to run out of money. And I do worry that there's a whole people in Treasury there going, well, we can't fix productivity, but we can fix tax, and let's see what we can come after. So productivity is our key driver. Australia as a nation has to look at itself and say, we need to make more, we need to produce more, we need to find a way through all the red tape, EPA laws, whatever it might be, to be able to create a wealthier country, which is a big ask.
Yeah, and business insolvencies are higher now than ever before. Victoria higher than New South Wales, double the number of percentage increase there. It's a really difficult time for business to even consider investing because they're just trying to survive.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of examples. You know, I've fallen for it myself. You know, the government said, oh, we're going to plantations, and then at the stroke of a pen, they turn around and say, oh, we're not doing that anymore. So, you know, we've got a whole heap of distrust going on at a government level. The government says we want you to, then in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, 5 years' time, they change
their mind.
So you sit there going, well, why would I
And that
invest?
uncertainty is, of course, the death of business investment. We've got to leave it there. Dr. Stephen Entickett, appreciate your time. Thank you.